So after California's Phillips 66 refinery shuts down, California is going to be forced to get its what gas it can't create on its own from India, South Korea, and the Middle East. So how does that help the environment, bringing it in on big shippers? How does that work? Yeah, let's get into it. Here we go. So these are the ships that they haul this stuff in on, right? Big cargo ships. And you see them. We see them in Seattle. We, sometimes just pulling up and just all kinds of stuff comes off, right? Well, you're going to have to bring those in from India, South Korea, and the Middle East. I mean, just a whole host of things come to mind there. The least, which is, this isn't environmentally friendly. I don't think these big shipping, ships are, carbon neutral. No. So this whole notion that California has a different blend of fuel to make it, cleaner and less dirty in the state of California, but the way that they get it creates even more pollution, but it doesn't count against their carbon metric. The whole thing is just, what are we talking about? That's where I think the entire environmental thing, the whole climate control, so much of it comes down to this. In today's world, in today's society, making these little changes, these little switch ups, is that really, really going to fix the problem? And the answer is overwhelmingly no. So if you want to go green, that's fine, but trying to convince me that it's really going to fix all of these issues or even really have a slight tweak on the problem. Does it help just a little tiny bit? Yeah, maybe a tiny bit, but the overall impact to society and the environment, it's just not that great. And yet people are so worked up. Oh, climate, we're in a climate crisis. Go ahead and recycle that pop can. It's going to get better. You're like, what are you talking about? Shutdown of the Phillips 66 refinery complex in Wilmington and Carson next year in California will force California to make up for the loss by importing more gasoline by ocean tanker. That's going to work out just great, which is expected to raise prices to motorists at the pump. Ocean tankers run on sludge. They run on this sludge oil stuff that just billows out into the environment. So, but it does, because it's coming from a different country, we don't worry about it. Oh, it's good. It's fine. It's all right. It's great. I mean, you can see them from a mile away coming, right? Closure will leave California with 8 gasoline refineries, down from 11 5 years ago. And California, you guys voted for this because you got gruesome Newsom. You got gruesome Newsom at your helm. And he is just on the warpath against big oil. He's talking about price gouging. It's like, really? Really? You're the one constricting the supply, and then you're talking to us about price gouging and how you want to level out the refinery, stuff that they have set up for when one of their refineries goes down for maintenance. Want to have backup? You want to have reserves? California for decades produced enough gasoline to supply almost all of its own needs, but the era of self-sufficiency is quickly coming to an end. Phillips 66 refinery complex in Wilmington and Carson now produces 1.3 billion gallons of gas annually. With no pipelines into the state and no plans to add new refineries, California will need to make up for the deficit by imports via ocean tanker, in what analysts say will be a costly endeavor and one that with inherent risks of supply disruptions. So it's not only an environmental issue, it's now you got to depend on, that's it. India. Oh, that should be fine. South Korea. Oh, no problem. They're pretty close by. And the Middle East. It's so ridiculous, right? It's so ridiculous. This is going to make California even more dependent on a longer supply chain. Not only will we see average upward pressure on prices, but probably volatility to prices as well. And it's not that hard to pop off and just say, hey, this is coming. This is happening. I covered this major story in this video here. Phillips 66 refinery closure sparks backlash against Newsom's new regulations. It's got 218,000 views. That video is done really well because this is not a hard topic. When you reduce the supply of gasoline or the ability for a state to make it, because you are basically telling refineries, hey, you got to do all this extra crap because we don't want you to have these price spikes. We want to level that out for the consumer. And so you're literally shortening up the supply. And in doing so, guess what's going to happen to the prices in gasoline in California? You got it. You got it. Ooh, up. It's not going to go down. I'll give you a hint. Gasoline tankers voyage to California from Singapore, another gasoline supplier, would take 30 to 40 days of just with the smog coming out, right? The sludge, burning that sludge, and supply chain snags caused by maybe a typhoon, maybe a little war. I mean, Middle East and war, hand in hand, right? Or a worldwide outbreak of some virus. I mean, that could happen, right? Remember in Long Beach, boats were just floating forever because they couldn't come into port because there was so much backup. You didn't have enough people working at the ports. Worldwide outbreak of some virus, and it could add weeks to that lengthy schedule, if not disrupting it entirely. So it could have wild disruptions on gasoline supply in California. And it's because California's got its own special blend of herbs and spices. Yeah, it's a special blend of gasoline that is cleaner. But so this is a self-inducing supply issue, future catastrophe waiting to happen, right? So gasoline, $10 a gallon in California. That's what I'm saying. I mean, at some point, that is not outrageous because you're only going to have so much. And California is already not able to produce all of the gas they need domestically. They're already importing like 8%. Even before the Phillips news, the state was fretting about possible supply shocks should more refineries shut down. When Phillips 66 announced the planned closure last week, it pledged to work with California to maintain current levels and potentially increase supplies. Let's see, you got another refiner closing. You got two more in the wings that are thinking about, well, all options are on the table. They might take those down too. You've got a bunch of supply issues with gas in California, and you've already got some of the highest gas prices in the land most all of the time. Unlike most states, California has no pipelines to import refined gasoline from other U.S. refineries, making the state what policymakers call a fuel island, meaning they can't bring it out in from elsewhere because the standards are too high. Self-imposed. And is any of this really having an overall impact on the environment? That is the question. Is it? Because if it's not, what are you even doing? You're just making the gas really expensive for your constituents. And there are no pipelines to move gasoline between Northern California and Southern California. You got nothing, making the Southland even more of an archipelago. Make sure you head on over to Reasonable TV if you're enjoying this content. We got a members only section there. We got 10 people stabbed in Seattle within 37 hours. That was a wild story. Jeremy Harris kind of does an in-depth, and because of the violent nature of that one, I can't show it on, the regular channels. On top of that, we got free crack pipes for addicts in Los Angeles Skid Row. That's a big deal right now because they're getting these crack pipes and then they're selling them to buy more drugs. $3.99 a month, 14-day free trial on reasonabletv.com. Check it out. Thanks in advance. Bye for now. So they can't go to gas refineries on the U.S. Gulf Coast. The Federal Jones Act requires that yada, 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 yada. So that's a no-go. Some replacement gas could come from refineries in Washington State. There's none in Oregon because, wipe your ass with a spotted owl. That was Washington State, wasn't it? I'm not a big environmental guy, if you can't tell. I just think most of it's a scam. So we could use refineries in Washington State using Jones-approved vessels, but most gasoline will have to be shipped in from other nations. That's going to work out just great. Yeah, then we get into ocean vessels or heavy polluters, and they run on heavy fuel, a thick tar-like residue left over after refining other petroleum products. Put it in the tanker, it's fine. It just throws it out in the atmosphere. We don't really see it because, they only come into port every now and then. They're just out there polluting the environment. But hey, all in the name of leveling out the, supply chain in California. While the state is committed to major reductions in greenhouse gases, it doesn't count emissions released by ocean tankers sailing more than 100 miles from the California coastline. So if it comes in from a foreign nation, it doesn't count. That is some amazing math. That's great. I mean, we're not really taking into consideration the overall impact to the environment here, but hey, what the hell? I mean, virtue signaling at its best, right? Let's just run with it. So most of the emissions from tankers delivering gasoline won't be included in the state's greenhouse gas reduction calculations. Sweet. All right. Those other countries, they're horrible. They're horrific. They're bringing it here and get big gas tankers. It's so ridiculous, isn't it? So ridiculous. Most of the unrefined crude oil processed in California arrives by ships from foreign ports. State policies have dramatically reduced the amount of crude pumped from California's oil fields. Not a shocker there, right? Not a shocker there. Drill, baby, drill. Energy independence. It's a thing. In so California's oil fields and foreign imports account for more than 60% of the total, and over a third of that is from Iraq and Saudi Arabia. That should work out good. It should be just fine. It should be good. The article goes on to talk about CARBOB, which is the cleaner burning gasoline. That's what California's got going on. And it's got an 80% reduction in cancer risk. Okay. All right. Are we sitting around huffing gasoline or what are we doing there? Yeah. Anyway, for years, the state has anticipated the closure of gas refineries as car buyers turn to electric vehicles. That ain't happening anytime soon. I know that California's saying 2035. That's just some nonsense. It's not happening. So the Phillips 66 announcement came as a surprise. Company said it's closing the refinery for strategic reasons, lower profitability compared to other assets in our portfolio. And they're also really, really old refineries. They need a bunch of maintenance and ongoing retrofitting. And it just doesn't make sense. So Phillips 66 said, closed. He declined to say, the guy from Phillips 66 declined to say why it's less profitable. It's like a grocery store that gets ripped off all the time, right? Sometimes they just can't make a go of it. But the company's most recent annual report offers some hints. So we got potential adverse effects on our refining, marketing, and midstream operations in California, which may be material to our results of operations, financial conditions, profitability, and cash flows. In other words, we don't want to do business in California anymore. It's not worth our risk. And the plants that we have there, they're not doing it for us, and they need a bunch of investment in, whatever. No can do. So you've got this new regulations come out that Newsom has told us is he's, fighting for the common man. And you know what it's going to do? Yeah, it's going to increase the price of gasoline for the common man and woman. Let's not be sexist, right? With the shutdown of Phillips 66 facility, California will be down to 8 refineries from 5 years ago. From 11 5 years ago. So you're creating a situation where you're constricting the supply. Big Oil says, not so much, not in California. And this is self-induced because got to have that super uber clean gasoline. You know what I mean? It's just, you got to do it. Can't have it otherwise. So Gavin Newsom has gone on the warpath against the oil industry. He's called 2 special legislative sessions over the past few years to combat price gouging. What even is that? I think that's just nonsense. How are you going to control that? I'm here from the government and I'm here to help, right? Really? Any legislation you put in place, whatever that company is that's impacted by it, you know how they get around it? They jack up the price of whatever they're selling and they say, well, we've got inherently more costs now. So there you go. There you go. So Californians expect to see your gas prices, I would say, next summer. That should be an interesting litmus test, right? Because during summer, there's always big spike in consumption. Everybody just wants to get out in their car, drive down Route 66, of course, right? So we'll see how it goes then. But The costs of not addressing climate change are becoming clear as insurance prices for flooding and wildfire threats. How we measure cost to consumers is a complicated thing and easy thing to demagogue. We're trying to transition to electric vehicles to reduce climate emissions because we have to. There are not other options. Yeah, I think we can go for a long time with the whole oil deal. I mean, I'm just saying we will, because the whole electric car thing, I mean, there's been a massive drop in demand for electric cars, right? Man, I have a lot of Tesla, the Cybertruck. There, I see probably 3, 4, 5 of those a day here because the tech bros don't know that those aren't real trucks. Those are horrific. They're a poor excuse for a moving garbage can. That's what they are. Stainless steel moving garbage can. That's what they are. They've got that hump on the back, just a triangle. I mean, you can't really haul anything in them. And nobody that drives a Cybertruck is capable of fixing anything. So what are you carrying in the back of those rigs? Nothing. Set of skis. Maybe if they fit diagonally. Well, thing's just absurd, right? The Cybertruck. I mean, what a novelty item. But if you want to get one, whatever. I take a Ford F-150 any day, right? Maybe a Chevy Duramax. All right. Yeah. Instead of sending oil 120 miles in a pipeline to a refinery that delivers to a gas station, you're extending the supply chain, which adds to volatility and expense and environmental pollution. It's not as if we're not using oil and gasoline here. We're just not getting it from people who have jobs here. Ooh, yeah. This whole thing is a scam, right? It's a ruse. It's a ruse. It's a ruse. I'm just thankful I don't live in California. I'm going down to Oklahoma here next week to see my parents. It'll be, the whole Thanksgiving thing. We celebrate the American Indians before we slaughtered them. Yeah. Well, anyway, having a piece of pie and eat some chicken. Eat some of that light chicken. Good times. But this whole issue here, it's not really a thing in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma. Yeah. Cheap gas prices there. I'll let you know what they are. Thanks so much for being here on this one. Catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.